Hey, this is Jonleonguerrero. Our guest today is Jonleonguerrero, my dad. Now, we've had a lot of guests on the show who've contributed somehow to our safety and security, many of them military veterans, strategists, academics, etc. My dad was a civil servant among many where I grew up in Vallejo, California, in the shadow of Mare Island Naval Shipyard, which was a shipbuilding and submarine facility. But unlike the welders, electricians, pipe fitters, and such who perform the trades, my dad had a security clearance of some sort that made it so that we never really knew the particulars about what he did. And when people asked, what does your dad do? It was easy to say, well, he works at Mare Island. That was the same answer that 70,000 kids in the Bay Area could deliver, so it wasn't a big deal that we didn't know. And it's not like he was a CIA field agent who spoke Arabic or something. But Pete was curious about what he did and suggested we have him on the show. And in the conversation you're about to hear, I learned some things about my dad and about events that I lived through that I never knew. So this conversation was very interesting for Pete and for me. We hope it's interesting for you as well. Now let me take a second to shift gears and remind you of our support of our favorite cause, Save the Brave. They are a certified 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans cope with post-traumatic stress. Please read all about them at savethebrave.org. and consider donating a few bucks to help them help some veterans who could use a hand. Pete and I both support Save the Brave with our time and with our recurring contributions right out of our PayPal accounts. And Scott Husing not only supports them, but he serves on their board. They're doing great work, so I hope you'll join us in supporting them as well. And we sure appreciate your support of the Break It Down Show. Do us a favor by rating and reviewing the show if you haven't already on whatever platform you listen to us. And buy yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie, or buy yourself another one, even if you have. As always, if you drop us a line or a comment on the show, we'll chime in back. Seeing your comments, and especially if you share your favorite episodes, helps new listeners find us, and we really appreciate it. And we hope you'll enjoy our special guest today. Boy, do those words mean something more than they ever have. Our special guest, the greatest guy I've ever met, my dad, Jonleonguerrero.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is Jonleonguerrero.
Hey, and this is Peteaturner.
This is Jonleonguerrero from the Breakitdownshow.
And now, the Break It Down Show with Jonleonguerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, that is going to be confusing to
Wait,
some people.
you're also...
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
that's interesting.
Sometimes we have the pleasure of meeting new people on the Break It Down Show, and other times we have the pleasure of talking to somebody we've known for a long, long time. Today's episode features a longtime listener, somebody who Pete calculated has probably listened to more episodes of the Break It Down Show than most anybody else, and that is my dad, also Jonleonguerrero. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
This is a long time coming.
Jonleonguerrero with an H.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's right.
Were you waiting for this day? You're like, God damn it.
No. When he asked me if I would do the show with you guys, I said, no, what in the heck would you want me to talk about?
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I think what you said, what in the hell would anybody be interested in hearing from me about?
Yeah.
And I said, well, the fuck if I know, but you have 21 years more shit to say, and they're listening to me, so they must want to hear something from you too.
And you'd also probably be, by my guess, about the 189th person who's been on the show that said that.
Yeah.
So
What in the hell does anybody want to hear from me about?
Yep, always some of the best shows.
Yeah, so that's how that goes. That's par for the course. Other things that people say that are pretty common to the show, well, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to say for an hour. And typically, we let those go for a little while, longer than an hour, so that we can say, I'm going to need to stop you because it's been an hour and 15. And I know we all have to go. So anyway, we didn't have any agenda in particular. We just wanted to catch up because you have had plenty of commentary about the 600 plus shows that we've put out. And sometimes they're not even the shows that I think you might listen to. and you end up listening to them and having something to say or some question about some piece of the content. So now's your chance to ask any of the questions that you wanted to know about any of the shows we've done in the past, and our chance to poke at you about the comments that you made about those shows. Let's start with questions. Do you have any questions about any of the shows that you've listened to in the past?
Yes, I do. Actually, more fascination than questions. It has been seeming to me that most folks that you've interviewed were very knowledgeable in their field, or their life experiences were something that stuck in their minds and were so easily led to just spurt them out with names. Yeah, I just listened to your 600 episode of Harold Brown.
Yeah.
Dang, that Harold Brown.
Yeah. John put that together, by the way. It was a hell of a job.
And he did not stutter with names of, I'm sure, people he has not seen in years, you know? And those memories, it just really, really intrigued me. Yeah.
You know, the thing about Harold Brown is that we celebrate him and we love him. He's a lovable guy. He's getting up there in years, and he's doing what we saw my grandma do, which was cling to those memories by recounting them. And I think that that's something that we're lucky to capture, because when we were looking from that perch atop the Lafayette building, he was pointing at all the landmarks in his life.
Yeah.
And going through that history by navigating the landscape.
It seemed like you guys were perched in somewhere in LA where he had 360 degrees of, over there, that's where I met, what's his name, and da-da-da-da-da, and oh, look over here, and this is where I met.
That's exactly how it was.
We were high atop downtown Long Beach, and we could see for miles and miles. So yeah, all of the memories that he was recounting, he was just going sort of, not necessarily from left to right, but there was a lot of, sequence that had landmarks that went from one to another.
What was really, really was when he picked up that 21-year-old Marine and took him all the way down to Pendleton all those years ago.
Yeah. And it's a story that, it didn't surprise us that he would do such a thing. Because before we set up and had that conversation with him, we had sandwiches.
Yeah.
And everywhere he goes in Long Beach, it's he's the sort of honorary mayor of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you could see him doing, just exercising his generosity.
And when, all the times that we used to run around in Long Beach when Uncle Julian and Auntie Chilling were still living down there, when he brought up those areas, I remembered them, thought, dang, he's not BSing here. No. Yeah, that was really something.
There was an interest that week. I think the next day, the show was Matt Hoy. And here is an interesting difference. Harold has worked through all of the war and the conflict, and I mean about the band War. He was in that band.
Yeah.
There's an easy acceptance and love there. Even if they don't cooperate and work together.
Yeah.
Matt Hoy's situation with UB40 is such that there is UB40 and there's UB40 with Ali and Astro. And you will not mix those two together, or you will get an email, and I did, from their lawyer saying you will not mention UB40 and anyone from that band.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're nice about it. Let me make sure I say that. They're nice about it, and they didn't give me a cease and desist. They're like, hey, let's understand there's a lot of strife here.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of pain. Line. Yeah. And those two bands are similar in age. I mean, War's been around a little longer, but UB40's been around for 40 years.
Yeah. Yes.
And they have a different level of, we'll call it love.
And then I never realized that War today is a different War than playing their covers.
Yeah. Hey, this is peteaturner from the Break It Down Show, checking in real quick to ask you this. John, Scott, and I all support Save the Brave with our time, our location, our effort, and our money. Each month we give a small amount. Do the same with us. Go to savethebrave.org. Click on the Donate tab, pick an amount that you want to come out each month, and they will handle all the rest. I stand behind these folks. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the show.
I never realized that War today is a different war than playing their covers,
Different
Yeah.
band.
and how Harold is treating that.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
surprised me too, pleasantly,
Yeah,
because I think that we've been curious about the answer to that question. But to hear him, again, not a surprise,
Yeah.
say, no, I wish everybody good fortune. I want everybody to succeed.
Yeah.
I want us to all play together. And, you know, to hear that from him. One of the first things that I heard him say when I met him years and years ago was about his son. Oh, he's so much more of a drummer than I am. You know, he's
Yeah.
always been humble that way.
yeah,
And the truth is, if you measure things chop for chop, yeah, his son Daryl is just an amazing drummer. And Harold himself he's a laid back groove drummer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, doesn't have a bunch of flashy chops or
Yeah.
anything like that. You can see that his son has taken the torch and furthered the craft.
yeah,
But for that to be one of the very first things he said, you should go listen to Daryl play. He's way better than I am. You know,
yeah,
okay. But everybody who's better than you, you know, got to get there on your back.
yeah,
And his just the kindness in his spirit is a lot different than the UB40 situation.
Yeah.
You know, back
if we
in
asked Lonnie Jordan those same questions, I don't know what he would say, but I suspect that there's legal things and there are lines drawn now, but he probably misses his brethren. I would guess that.
you know, just comes to mind when I was playing music in the 70s and we were playing war stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Harold Brown was the drummer then, right?
Yes.
He was
He's the
he was the original.
Yeah.
And a heavy set guy named Joe Guerrero
Yeah.
was our drummer back then. And Joe Guerrero was about 10 years, 15 years older than I was at the time. But to me, he's like a Harold Brown, where no big fancy stuff on the drums,
Yeah.
but you can count on
Need
him.
it to be there, it's gonna be there.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's right there. And he'll listen one time we put a record on and he'll listen
Yeah.
to it one time. And then, and that's it. All right, let's go. And like I said, if there were any riffs or anything in between there that he would not care to tackle because maybe he's not going to do it justice, he won't. And did we miss it? No, because he was right there. Joe Guerrero, you can count on him, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that Harold Brown was the same kind of guy.
I'm sure.
that,
And when you get bands that have that many people in them, like
Yeah.
War did,
Yeah.
you have to stay out of the way most of
Yeah,
the time.
yeah,
And
and
nobody likes the drummer who's always in the damn way.
Yep. Yeah, because we had those too.
He did say he specializes in the roll, though. And he even remember he mouthed his roll.
Well, yeah, because
did say that.
there's certain roles that I remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
That it was like a
That he could
signature.
execute. Yeah.
And when a band or a production needed that, call on Harold because
Yeah.
he knew that he would deliver.
Yeah.
So yeah, wow, that's really something. Talking about somebody else who was on the show, Johnny Walker.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
time? All the times, probably.
Well, all the time, but particularly the first episode.
Yeah. Okay.
That was really grabbing to me because of, well, you put on that show or you interviewed him when he was a new
Brand new
American or American resident at the time. Maybe he wasn't yet a citizen,
Right.
but he was
How
new
long
here.
had he been here, Pete?
He has been here, I think, 9 years now.
So when we got him was
probably in his third or fourth year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it gotta
'Cause-
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
And-
at the golf tournament, was
Yeah,
it
with
not?
Duke Carbon.
Yeah.
And so he was relaying his experiences of being a San Diegan, and how he was accepted in this new world,
Yeah.
along with his family, and contrasting that to where he came from and what he did for us that got him to our country.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
some
very
contrast,
fascinating.
that's for sure.
Yeah. So his subsequent episodes were just as interesting, but that first one just really was grabbing.
It's such a unique story to hear that perspective. The person that, he loves Iraq, but
Yeah.
he couldn't stay.
Yeah.
And he also loves America, and he wants to stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what an honor it is for all of us.
That's right.
To have someone pick.
He loves America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't care how he loves America. I just love that he loves it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This brings right into talking about immigrants, because we're immigrants.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. I mean, we didn't come here as an immigrant. We came here as an American citizen, but god dang it.
But it's a big jump.
We were not white folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was pretty much a rude awakening on our part.
Yeah.
Because growing up, I probably ran into 10 black people.
Okay.
One who
Under 10.
Yeah. It wasn't because they weren't there, because the military was there, and there's
Sure.
plenty of them there. But the under 10 I'm talking about was the ones that I actually touched and felt
interact
and
with.
bumped with. Yeah. And the very first one was an old man named Jimmy Brown, who was an Air Force civilian stateside hire, which brought to Guam. He was an electrician, and he was a tenant of my grandpa. We grew up in one of the houses that my grandpa owned, and so rather than renting from anybody else, we stayed there. And so we mingled with him because he was around in the weekends, and he liked children. And so, he showed us how to shoot a BB gun and not to shoot at birds, because we wanted to shoot at birds.
Of course.
Because they were moving targets.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah, and so he was the first one. And then when I started going to elementary school, Mickey Jones, I just heard over 2 weekends ago that he's lived in San Diego since he was an adult, and I never knew that. And I lived in San Diego. My wife and I lived in San Diego for 8.5 years and never ran into him. And it just saddens me that I didn't, because Mickey Jones, he came to Guam before we went into what we called pre-primer. We called it pre-primer, but it's either kindergarten before first grade. So his parents didn't want to live on base. They were stateside hire also for the Air Force, and the Air Force would have accommodated them military housing. That's how back then.
What years are these?
What years?
Yeah.
52, 53.
Okay.
Yeah, 53.
So this is just a handful of years, 6 years or so after World War II is over.
Yes.
So that's all fresh.
That's all fresh.
Wow.
In fact, it was so fresh that when growing up, DDT was sprayed on the island by the military, because they said these will eliminate mosquitoes or cut down the mosquito population and stuff like that. Unbeknownst to the population back then, that shit it's not good for your health.
More than mosquitoes.
But the government said, hey, this is good for us, and so just like Agent Orange was treated in Vietnam, right? Yeah. But anyway, so Mickey and his sister Kathy lived in the village where I went to Catholic school up in Zonia. So Mickey and Kathy were amongst Chamorros, black guys, black people, right? And the mom and dad were not Catholics, but they immersed themselves into the parish, the St. Francis Parish, because
that was the community.
That was the community, and Mickey's dad was a carpenter, and so he brought his trade over to the to the church, and Father Alvin said, I don't care that you're not Catholic. I don't
got a hammer?
Yeah. You don't need to come to church. But if you're willing to work with us, hey, And so Mickey and Kathy spoke our language.
Wow.
They spoke Chamorro all through. Yep. And then I found out that to this day, he still speaks Chamorro down in San Diego.
And he lives in San Diego.
Yep.
And you never ran into him.
And I never ran into him.
That's unfortunate.
So Mickey was another one. And then, let's see. Oh, and then going to high school at JFK, we had a few more black dependent kids, particularly ones that played basketball.
Let me put some context. These are kids of people who work in the military or whatever. They call them dependents. They're not black dependent kids. They're just called dependents, and they happen to be black in this case.
Right, they happen to be black in this. Yeah, but there was all kinds.
Sure, yeah. There's just dependents, or just people who aren't in the service, who are
in the family of the person in the service.
So growing up, we didn't choose color or whatever because we were all together.
Yeah.
And I guess because we accepted them, the kids, they didn't bring to school or to the community this thing that maybe was lingering in their midst before they came to Guam. But maybe they were young enough and innocent
when
enough
they lived in Mobile, Alabama, or wherever.
Right.
It was they lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the ones who I met in high school already had some kind of things going on in their life because they didn't come to Guam as little kids like Mickey Jones. They came to Guam as teenagers. So they already
And
had
cement
some.
had dried around a couple of things.
Yeah,
Well, and also keep in mind, like the Army had only recently desegregated, you know.
that's right.
Or the military in general. Jackie Robinson had, in 47, breaks the color barrier, you know. And so these things had just happened before.
Everything was fresh.
Yeah. Back then, though, you know, we thought 1945 liberation was way back then.
Yeah.
But really, it wasn't.
It wasn't,
right?
yeah.
So when we left Guam in 1975 and brought these guys over, John, without an H, was 4.5, and his brother Jay was 10 months old.
Yeah.
And the four of us came here not knowing a soul.
Yeah.
Here.
Crazy.
So
That's a big jump.
that was crazy.
My first day of school.
Did you guys fly?
When we came here, we were brought over in a charter plane from Anderson Air Force Base to Travis Air Force Base because at the time, 1975, remember, end of war, and so cutbacks, and so we were going through a reduction in force at ship repair facility in Guam, and so what the civil service tried to do its best was to, instead of letting us go, letting all the employees go that they didn't need or couldn't pay for anymore at SRF Guam, relocate. And so if you want to leave the island, you're going to leave the family, but we can make it happen.
Yeah.
So most people said, yeah, I think so. You know, what the heck is they're here for us?
Yeah.
So
And,
again, for our audience, there's one thing is that, you know, when you're 7,000 miles from the nearest other civilization, the opportunity to go experience something new in some new place those opportunities are rare for a lot of people. And so if you're from a family of means and you get to travel, that's great. But there are a lot of people on Guam whose ticket off of the island to see anywhere else in the world. Because when you live in, you know, Fort Worth, well, you can get in your car and drive over to Houston and see what that looks like. Or you can, you know, there's none of that. There's no opportunity to leave that island for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So for there suddenly to be an opportunity, the leaving of the family was, you know, the leaving of your central family unit was a big deal, but the opportunity to see something else in the world for a lot of people was going to happen once. And so to seize that opportunity for a lot of people was not a difficult question. And that's why there are a lot of us here, particularly in Vallejo and in San Diego. So the largest Chamorro population outside of Guam is in San Diego. The second largest is in Vallejo for that reason.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yep. And well, now that Mare Island has shut down almost 30 years ago now, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Isn't that something?
That is something. I remember seeing
It seemed
guys
like it just
running and
happened.
calling cadence while I was golfing on the golf course.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it does seem like it was just the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because of its closure, now Vallejo's population is competing with places like Bremerton, Washington, because the shipyard up there and the naval base, you know, is still a big thing in Washington. So there's a lot of relocated Chamorros up there that are there because they're in the Navy or the Army nearby or the Air Force. Yeah. So, and there's nothing here now. So the opportunities here are not necessarily brought on by the federal government. But, you know, Guam has learned to recover from that being federal government biggest employer back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, after World War II.
Yeah.
And all the way to 75. It's recovered. now, tourism and other things. But hey, we're just going all in different places here. So when we moved here in 75, that awakening, going to the stores and realizing that
nobody else here is wearing puka shells.
Yeah. Oh.
That was my realization. There was nobody else in my school wearing puka shells. And then I remember a couple of things. First of all, there was a kid in my class there, Ken Cruz, who was also from Guam, and we wore jackets. We identified each other, and there was some security in having him around, and a little more security in some other people, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the biggest awakening was, I am dressed unlike these people, and they're telling me about it. In a way that I was not accustomed, and
that was really something. See, he saw that in school. We saw that in the stores. And it just smacks you in the face because where the hell did that come from? What brought it on? Did I do anything? Yeah. And then some of them would have done it naturally, I guess, and then back away because, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Kind of treatment. And then there are the ones who thought, no shit, this is my country, not yours. Kind of thing, So we needed to learn to separate those attitudes.
Yeah.
As we try to live here and
identify them, separate them.
Yeah.
Why did you start him in school so early?
We're having.
I'm sorry.
Why did we start him in school so early?
So early, yeah, because he and I should both be in a year back. Both of us are too young for our grade.
Oh. We're both the youngest people in our grade, but the cutoff in Vallejo when we signed up for school was December 1st, and my birthday being November 29th. I barely made it.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No. You brought up a point. But yeah, that's how that turned out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm October birth person, and back in Guam, that was a whole different ballgame. That skew of cutoff made me one of the older ones to graduate.
That's so weird.
So I met this kid in the first grade. His name was Kenny. I don't remember what his last name was, but he could cuss. He was good at it. He was a pro. I remember for some reason he and I hit it off. Mm-hmm. And I was an odd kid, but he immediately treated me with kindness, which was different. And I was able to really notice that he treated me with kindness because he treated everybody else like a motherfucker. And by the way, was the first person that I knew who used the word motherfucker. I didn't know that. I was unaware that in customary cussing that the mothers were having fucking. I didn't know that was a combination. And I was like, wow, that was very interesting. And I think my fascination with his very adult, very eloquent ability to cuss. I mean, he must have come from sailors and the like. He was just good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember thinking, you can cuss better than my dad. My dad can't cuss like you. And, well, that was just one of the observations. Yeah. But it's funny that we're having these. I've never heard these stories, by the way.
Yes.
So the similarities in our experience, just the generational difference, they were similar experiences. I mean, I'm relating to the things that you are saying.
Yeah.
I'm just relating to them as a 5-year-old. Because I had a similar
puka shells
thing. Yeah. Puka shell. I mean, I had white patent leather shoes, and I wore them and meant it. And how come? I don't know what Converse All-Stars are.
Yeah.
But these are patent leather. So, yeah, it was different.
Yeah,
it was different.
And back when we brought him out here, 1975. Mare Island was thriving, and and Mare Island was a submarine base, and so submariners have a different way of cussing than surface sailors, and so that Kenny you're talking about, his dad may have been a submariner, and he just let it slip. Maybe he didn't want his son to learn that language particularly, but he let it slip somehow. Kenny picked it up.
Yeah, or he wasn't thinking at all. about his letting his language slip.
Come back with a couple extra beers from the horse cow in him.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just let him fly.
Now let's digress because we
Yeah.
were talking about. I started to talk about Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
And how that interested me, and how.
Boy, we got off on a tangent.
No
I was
kidding.
ready though.
But he coming here and becoming immersed as an American or an American to be.
Right.
That just lit a different fire under him to
Yeah.
say, hey, I can do this here.
Yeah.
I know I can say this and I can go over there. No shit.
I can go wherever I want.
And I can go wherever I want. And
Yeah.
I can
And my
talk
kids
to-
are safe. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. My kids are still going to be here.
Yeah. And, and so that, right. And I can talk politics. Nobody's going to shoot me.
Yeah.
That,
Remarkable.
Yes. And it was so
It's
hard.
amazing to see somebody savor those things. Because
Yeah. And to put the phone away and to pause that episode was hard because, man, this guy's bringing in a perspective that Americans had no clue.
a sincerity. Yeah. He's a remarkable guy.
In his book, he arrives, gets here like, holy shit, I'm really here. Because when they were leaving, it's straight out of a movie where he's like, are these people going to come chase down this airplane? Because he was hunted all the time. People don't get how everybody was trying to kill Johnny everywhere he went. Luckily, he rolled with some hard dudes who fought back hard for him. But he was afraid that it wasn't going to happen until that plane was in the air. And then it still didn't right until they got to Target. And it blew his fucking mind because everything's polished.
Target,
and
the
cleaned.
store.
Yeah.
When he arrived at Target, the retail
Because
store.
a bazaar or a store in Iraq is bullshit. It's just a bunch
it's
of
just a collection
shitty-
of people.
Yeah, and there's like
selling their
15 of the
wares.
same shop. It's the same bullshit, Chinese cheap.
Right.
fly swatters.
Yeah, everything that like you swat two flies and fall. That's his retail world, and
Yeah.
then he drops in at a Target, and he's like, just takes his breath away.
And it was probably like a grand, like a Target
so
in
great land.
Cincinnati. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So was he evacuated with his family or him first?
Yeah, they were all able to come
All to
together.
come-
I mean, his immediate family.
Yeah, you're right, right. So his wife's experiences were right along his when they entered that Target. Probably she was.
Like, oh my God, give me the credit card.
Yeah, what a thing to experience.
Did you guys have that moment though? Like when you really got here and you're like, holy shit, this is really a different place in that kind of way.
Not exactly, because I spent 2 or 3 trips here to Mare Island because when I started my career, I started as an electronic mechanic apprentice from the Naval Shipyard program. Back then, the Navy had a program called Naval Apprenticeship, and it was a 4-year program that you graduated after 4 years with an AA. Because we were only subjected to so many college courses along with the trade. And by the time I graduated in 71 from the apprenticeship program, so in 75 I was a seasoned journeyman. But I went from being an electronics mechanic into an upgrade, a specialized guy in cryptographic equipment.
Okay. There's money in that.
Yeah. And so back then we had our own section in the electronic shop that was, and it was compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Pete, I've never heard this story.
And so the special equipment training courses were here at Mare Island.
Let me clarify. So it's compartmentalized because you guys are dealing with classified product. I mean, like not the data, but the machine.
The machine
itself is classified, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so back then, after Vietnam War, really was the catalyst for improving the methodology of encryption, because in the start of Vietnam War, all these army guys were walking around with walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
And who else? Shit, Viet Cong had walkie-talkies too, probably. And so there was no encryption.
Yeah.
And so whatever movement they were making, they were found out before they got to the target.
Yeah.
I find myself very, very fortunate in when I started my career. I started with electron tubes.
Yeah. Wow.
I learned electron tubes theory in my classes. So, going from electron tubes to transistors to eventually into mini circuits and stuff like that. So I learned it all.
Wow.
And I'm very, very fortunate because later on in my career, when I went into management and started nurturing these kids out of high school and even college with engineering degrees, had no fucking idea what a left-handed screwdriver was per se. They were fascinated that I could talk this language. So I came here for cryptographic equipment classes that certified me. You cannot touch it. Back then, you could not touch a piece of equipment unless you were certified.
Yeah.
And so most of the courses here were 10, 11, 12 weeks, rigid. I mean, there were times when I thought I was going to flunk.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have, 80 was passing on a test.
Yeah.
Not 79.
Yeah.
And so 79 might get a foot soldier killed.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I came out here for those classes, I immersed myself day and night into passing that course because you don't want to go back to Guam and say, hey, I failed the fucking thing. They're not going to like that.
No.
So I didn't have hardly any time to stroll around or look at the city or whatever like that. So I was supposed to be RIFT, reduction
in force.
Right. I was supposed to be. And then towards the end of that RIF, I made I didn't make the cut, so I wasn't RIFT. Meanwhile, though, I had submitted my application here to the Mare Island Electronics Shop just for backup.
Right.
Because in a RIF condition, you were vulnerable. If the Navy said, we want your ass to go to Bangor, Maine, at the shipyard over there,
off you go.
You have no choice.
Right.
Either you take that or you don't go.
Right.
Because already these other folks already took on the slots at Mare Island or at Bremerton or Long Beach Naval Shipyard at the time was still around, or Pearl Harbor. So I put in my application here, and Mare Island accepted me before the RIF thing. But I had to tell them that I was a candidate of being RIFT. And if I was RIFT, what then?
Yeah.
And so Mare Island back then said, no, we accept you. You're coming.
Right. Were you a standout in terms of your capability with the equipment already?
Oh, yeah.
So that helps.
They wanted my certification.
Right.
Yeah. And I had just finished that certification in 73.
Let me put some context into that. So here's what everybody has to understand. The equipment you're producing creates encrypted messages, classified messages. You can't hear what's going on. So when a submarine leaves here, if their machine is on the fritz, they have to ultimately communicate. They'll communicate in what's called the clear. So they'll say, we're here, we're doing this. And maybe no one hears because they're in the middle of the damn ocean.
Yeah.
But someone always hears. Someone's always listening. So someone like you is vital because you're literally protecting the lives of everybody on that sub or whatever that piece of equipment is that's talking to that sub.
Yes. And back then, pieces of cryptographic equipment were segregated. There was the voice encryption machines, and then there was the data encryption machines, and then so essentially those two main things, the voice and data, audio and digital, in very elementary stages. So encrypting a signal was an art. Fibonacci is one of the theories that we utilized back then. And although Fibonacci now is considered a very simplistic kind of approach, right? It's not simplistic. A goddamn algebraic formula is, oh shit, it stumped my ass back then. But anyway, so Fibonacci was one of the theories that was used in encryption devices, and there was another couple of them that just skips my mind right now. But anyway, so once again,
what was that movie star's name? She was hot as hell, and she invented something.
Oh, right, yes, Hedy Lamarr.
Hedy Lamarr.
She developed early frequency hopping.
Okay.
And you know about frequency hopping, So she opened one of the doors to make that possible, and then basically said, "You guys can have it," and didn't hold the patent because it saved lives.
Wow.
Yeah. Very, very early, but she was brilliant, and she opened the door.
So anyway, so then I wasn't riffed, and but I already had a ticket. So we were already on the verge of moving. Here's another thing that I consider myself very fortunate in, that because I was not a regular electronic mechanic journeyman, I had the specialized classification. My moving expenses was upgraded from lieutenant classification, which was something like 12,000 pounds of household goods and one car, to a commander.
Oh.
Whoa. Shit.
Yeah.
Which allowed me 18,000 pounds of household goods. I thought, oh, God
We were
damn.
moving shit over here we didn't even like.
Yeah. and 2 cars.
Yeah.
I was afforded 2. Yeah. All the guys said, God damn, how come you? I said, I don't know, shit.
Yeah.
I'm just doing as I'm.
You gonna put your couch in here? I'll carry it
That's
for
right.
you.
I'll carry it for you. So those were the little things that we were afforded. So coming here, yes, we didn't know a soul per se, but I was a little bit familiar with the land, but not enough to say that I'm familiar with the land. So when we moved here, then I had to report to work right away.
Yeah.
We gave you 2 or 3 days to get your ass over here, so now you got to come to work.
Yeah, come on.
And so we were trying to do all of those logistics as I was working during the day. So what we left behind was a house that we were fortunate enough to be able to have built. We took a mortgage out. My wife and I took a mortgage out at 21 years old.
Wow.
To build a fucking house. and so...
Did your parents lose their minds when you did that?
To an extent.
Yeah.
But...
Because 21-year-olds
on
are
one
always
hand,
20.
on one hand, they were losing their mind, but on the other hand, they said, "No, we expect that of you." God, but why did you want to get married, by the way? So we didn't have time to sell the house. For one thing, the house was in my mom's big estate of places. So essentially, I wasn't allowed to sell outside of the family.
Sure.
Whatever. And so we put it for rent. And we put it up for rent. And, we thought, oh, shit, there's some vulnerability here, right?
Yeah.
You're putting up for rent and you're moving 7,000 miles away from this thing. So we relied on my family to oversee the situation. So we came here with not too much in our pockets, but we came from owning a home to now we're going to rent something? What the hell is that?
Yeah.
That's moving back. But we did it for what? Almost 6 months.
Not too long. So we started off at the Royal Motor Hotel.
Okay.
When we arrived, which is near, for anybody familiar with Vallejo, it's right off of Highway 80, near the Burger King on Solano Avenue.
All right.
Right across the street from there's that hotel that's
right
in front of Mi Pueblo or whatever that thing's called nowadays.
Yeah.
And then we went from there, and we got an apartment on Fleming Avenue.
Yes.
And I went to Cave School, and I just found out that I was in the same class as my good friend Vijay Patel and Jared Coughlin. So I knew those guys in the first grade, but I didn't really know them because I wasn't at Cave School very long. We took off from there, and I would say probably 6 months before we bought a house on the west side.
Yeah, we bought our first house under a year from the time we came to Vallejo.
224 Dwight Way.
224 Dwight Way. A small house. It was...
near Cooper School, where I met Kenny, who could cuss.
Kenny.
Yeah. So it was very similar in size to our house in Guam, but that sucker was 30 years old, and so in Guam,
carpet in my bedroom was 30 years old too.
In Guam, you build houses that were concrete, because the 200-mile-an-hour storms could come any moment.
Cinder block and filled cinder block.
Yeah, filled cinder block and then cement roofing.
Right.
And so you were well protected.
A bunker.
Right. Yeah. And then when we came to California and we were being shown these homes to purchase.
Yeah.
You're not going to, God damn, what the hell is this? So that was something else to get used to. Was there's no storms here hardly, so you don't need a goddamn cement house.
Barely need a jacket.
Right. So that was something to, but we're still going to pay a mortgage in the thousands of dollars for this thing that could break.
Yeah. In a place with earthquakes.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, earthquakes, they weren't, I don't know, they just weren't part of our making back then. Still, when we first moved here. It's just the idea that we're now going to go into this house that you can jump, and when you jump in the house, the things shake.
Yeah. And you got 2 boys.
And I got 2 boys.
Kaboom.
So,
I don't know who broke that.
Wall.
So those were things that we had to, just adjust with. Yeah.
At the base of our stairs here in Benicia, growing up, we had these ridiculously ugly 70s era tiles. My dad would say, quit jumping off the stairs. Because, 1, 2, 3 step, flying down 10 steps and landing on the ground. Yeah. And every single one of those tiles was just shattered. My dad started covering them with clear tape. Yeah. Quit jumping! Bam! We couldn't stop. There was no way to do it. That's boys for you. Yeah. Destroying his property every day as we get older. His house getting more and more torn apart. You know?
Yeah. Anyway,
we didn't stay in that house for very long.
No, we stayed there just about 2 years. Yeah, because we bought it in 76 and we moved here in September of 78. Yeah. And the day we moved here...
Was this house new?
Yes.
Yeah. This house was brand new. A couple monumental things happened when we moved into this house. First of all, Roots was on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember watching Alex Haley's Roots. And if you're a kid and you saw Roots as a kid, that was an eye-opener. It made me figure out real fast one of the likely reasons why Kenny could cuss. But
because LeVar Burton was his uncle?
Yes. But watching that and experiencing it in a way that was different from a regular house, because we were moving in to this house. So we were still, moving pizza boxes, furniture wasn't here yet. We had a TV sitting on a box, and we just gathered around because it was time to watch TV. And I think we were required to watch it for school or something. So we had to kind of stop and watch this event on TV. But our house wasn't set up yet because it was all brand new. So it made it even more memorable because it wasn't like I was sitting on the couch that was always there. I was sitting on the floor watching this thing that was changing my life. So there was that. There were new neighbors who have since become lifelong friends, like Kelvin, who you know. Yeah. He moved in. Their house was new across the street as well. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff unfolding kind of at the same time was made for a quick inculcation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. So anyway.
The time that we were moving into this house, my work was sending my ass to Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
The Naval Air Station, God dang, what's the name of that Naval Air Station? Right outside of Memphis. Uh-huh. Because I was part of a team that was setting up voice and data communications for these portable airports.
Okay.
Towers.
Yeah.
The towers were being fabricated there at that airport.
And you're attaching
Millington Naval Air Station.
And are you guys attaching the equipment to the tower?
Yeah, we were housing the equipment and all that for the towers. And then, of course, they built, in order to house the cryptographic portions of the equipment, these little compartments that, and enough for one guy to go inside there and turn on. None of this stuff was remote back then, so you had to turn them on. And so then, of course, there's always the signal segregation of being inside a red compartment into coming out here as black into the open world. Yeah, so I was gone for, I don't know, 9 or 10 weeks, I think.
Wow.
The time we moved in here, my ass was gone.
Yeah.
So Julie and the boys were left here to fend for themselves. And at the time, fortunately, we had some close friends that came out from Guam also nearly the same time that we did. The Uguns, for one, they helped move in the stuff because I just left.
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. It's like I was like being in the military without being in the military.
Yeah, for
So
sure. You were. I say I'm with the military more than I was in it, and I was with those guys all the time, working side by side.
Yeah,
you're doing the same thing.
So I was doing the same thing for 40 years of my career. So you probably exposed to the same thing. I could almost with the back of my mind tell you about the military echelon, both in the enlisted world and in the officer ranks and all that stuff. I was even in a position later on in my career where I was asked to write performance appraisals for these commanders and lieutenant. I said, God damn it,
that's hard
work. I'm a civilian.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we just need your perspective to, for their performance appraisal. I said, God damn it. So like you, I was never in it, but damn it, I was in it.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
Going to the Pentagon to provide data for funds. Yeah. That if you don't, right now they're appropriated to you in your program, but if you don't take it and spend it and show me how you're going to spend it, it's going to go away.
It's going to go away, yeah.
So, all of that stuff, that military stuff, man, is, and I appreciate all of that.
Sure.
To the point where I can appreciate all the things that are happening right now. One thing is that thing that we're going through with this impeachment situation. With how that funding is. Because, man, in my time, those fundings were... when they're appropriated by Congress to go to a particular nation because of how it's already been drawn out to why, where, and when they're going to get these funds.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do with it.
Yes.
We're supposed to find out what they're going to do with that money.
Right.
Every fucking cent of it.
Yes.
And so for now listening to this one guy to say, no, I'll give it to you, but I need you to do me something first.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
So, so let's regress again, going back to Johnny Walker.
Yes.
Johnny Walker was immersed with the SEALs every single, like you mentioned in the show, Johnny Walker was probably in more, and not probably, but was in more missions than any one particular SEAL in his entire time there growing up and until he was extricated, right?
Yeah, it's 100% true.
And I just wonder what his feelings are now with, with his peers, and I want to call
they're his peers for sure.
His peers, who spoke up and said, "No, that guy's not supposed to be doing that shit."
Yeah,
that chief.
Yeah,
and to speak up, because everybody's taught to have your brother's back, right?
Yeah,
and so was Johnny Walker, but. When you're not doing something kosher, God damn it, I can't just shut up.
So I have to be very careful on how I say this because I want to say it the right way. Johnny Walker is a wild animal, and I've described him that a lot of times because anybody put in that kind of situation where you're literally scrambling for your life all of the time, and this is before the war, just day to day under threat, barely surviving, not getting paid anything to drive the length of Texas every day in your truck to maybe bring home a living for your family is hard. And then it gets worse, and you go out into combat all the time. So
So before the war, going back, because I don't think I caught.
He was a truck driver.
He was a truck driver.
Right. Oh, among other things.
Okay.
So he already lived on the edge of survival for a long time. And so then the war came, and then he went out and was actually in combat all the time.
Yeah.
And then he earned the respect for SEALs where they gave him a weapon along the way. That's how trusted he is. So first off, there's no way he ever rolls over on any SEAL. He didn't see shit about shit. He didn't know anything. You ask him, you want to put him on the stand, and he doesn't even know to not lie on the stand. Not that he's dumb. It's just that's so foreign to him, and this is his tribe.
Yeah.
There's no way he ever rolls on those guys. The other thing is the stuff that Eddie Gallagher did and his peers did, and I want to be fair when I say this, these are some of the most dangerous men on the planet.
Oh, of course.
And when they go out and they do things, the ethics aren't the ethics that are here at this table. They're different ethics.
Their situations are completely different.
Right.
And what we ask of them requires a different perspective on things that we take for granted, like ethics.
For sure. And then, do SEALs do questionable things? Yes. But I mean, I think everybody in every profession, they have people that, especially when you're like the professional, people do, questionable things. And then also the court.
To give it an equivalent, if a guy is really good at building fences, he's going to take that guard off of his skill saw.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's going to shape the top of that fence post. You know how it's cornered and angled like you like it?
Yeah.
He's going to do that freehand with that skill saw with no guard on it.
Yeah.
And he's going to do it fast.
Yeah.
And he's going to move on to the next thing because he's a pro. Now, that seems like an elementary equivalency, but that's really what it comes down to when a guy is out in the field and he's called upon to make decisions that you casual listeners out there, we love that you listen, but there are times when somebody's work is going to call upon him to make decisions you wouldn't dream of making.
Yeah.
And pretty regularly. And so it's just different.
And it's hard men doing hard things with other men competing with them also doing hard things. And the hard doesn't just stop. Like, oh, now we're going to be gentle. It just doesn't. It doesn't work that way. So whatever Eddie Gallagher did or didn't do, and I hope to have him on the show at some point so we can really get into some of that, not the particulars, but just who he is. They have to stick together because if you don't, then you can't be on a team like that. And I want those guys in those teams. And yes, they're going to do things that are morally questionable here, but not out there. And I mean, we've put some guys in the grave that I can tell you firsthand, like, holy shit, this person is evil incarnate, and the sooner this guy gets killed, the better.
Yeah.
How fast can we put a packet together on this guy? And you go out and you kill him. And sometimes you kill the wrong guy, and you're like, holy shit, I killed the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Because you can't. It's horrible. And then all of the commanders in line above them, they should be saying, that's my guy. Those are my guys. It's my team. I got it. I got everything under control. I accept responsibility for what they do. They're doing exactly what I ordered them to do. I think Scott Husing says this. I ordered them to win, kill, dominate, and then be gentle every now and then. No, fuck that. That's not what they do. So Johnny would never roll on those guys, and whatever Eddie Gallagher did or didn't do, the courts are equally culpable in how they've handled their right. And they've done this over and over again, where they are very questionable of people's rights. And so, the whole thing's a mess. Eddie Gallagher will always pay a price for this. Clinton Lawrence will always pay a price. Whether or not their decision was right or wrong, they've already been punished. Yeah. And so, hard. They're hard, though. These are really hard things.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah, like I said, the Malay massacre in Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
That Lieutenant Cali.
Yeah, Cali, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The things he did back then and how he was brought to court and brought to justice.
Right.
The military justice.
Right.
Right. Yeah. See, that's the thing that...
or the guy that left the camp in Afghanistan and went on that massacre.
Yeah.
No one's saying that that's cool. And we all agree, like, one, you can't go to Afghanistan and be tried there because you won't get a fair trial. You get to come back here and have your rights and get dealt with here. But no one's like saying, yeah, that's what we want. Eddie Gallagher is a totally different story. It's totally like this weird gray area where you're trying to slice hairs and people are betting their careers on Eddie's career.
Right. What just upsets me to no end is that our commander-in-chief, in my opinion, had no fucking right to interfere with that. That should have been left to their people to take care, because there is a system there.
Yeah, as it always has been.
To handle that situation.
Yeah.
And that's what the flags are, most of them anyway. Are saying,
but ultimately, he's the boss.
Well, that's true.
Yes. And when President Obama let Chelsea Manning out, same thing.
I understand.
Yeah.
You know how many people were involved in that Chelsea Manning decision, though?
How many?
From what I've read so far, at least 20.
Yeah.
In the community.
Yeah.
He didn't just say, "Oh, fuck it, I'm letting her out." No,
and look,
did I agree? I don't think I agreed.
It's also very challenging, and I don't know if you realize this, but Chelsea at the time, PFC Manning, we'll just say, so we're not offensive to anybody, sat 100 feet away from where Peter Van Buren and I worked. We didn't work in the same office. None of the three of us did, but we all, and I didn't know who PFC Manning is. The fuck who PFC is, but easily could have struck up a conversation with either of us and said, "I'm having this crisis of conscience."
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had a good answer. That's how hard that situation was.
Yeah.
So when the president does that pardon, they're the boss.
Oh, I understand. Oh, yeah.
And so I don't care who the president is. If they make that decision, whether it's political or whatever else, and are there political motivations? Sure. But those guys also, every single one of those people we've discussed have all suffered.
Oh, yeah.
Because we as a nation sent them into combat.
Yep.
Ill-prepared to do what they had to do.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. I agree there. But just in my career, not being a uniform member, but immersed in the situation, I have my opinions of how those things should be done. Now, because I was never a uniform person, if I did something wrong, I would never have been taken into their court.
Right. Yeah.
Court martial wouldn't be.
Right. That wouldn't be.
No, we would be going to civil court.
Yeah.
So, but there are courts that handle those kinds of situations and should be left there. Cali was pardoned by. Eventually, he was pardoned. Right?
Yeah, I think so. by
Nixon.
I think so. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I think so too. So I just thought what Johnny Walker would have. What he thought of that, but maybe he didn't have any thinking of that because, like you said, he came from a different world into the.
Sometimes he says things that are shocking, like shockingly, because his education was not based in how we were taught, and a lot of it was taught by people who weren't qualified to be an educator at all.
Yeah,
it was just
And
ad hoc education.
And he wasn't a professional. He didn't have an undergrad degree. He didn't go to college, right?
No,
he was a truck driver.
Yeah, he's a truck driver. Yeah. His degree is in killing and trying not to be killed. That's the thing he knows about, survival.
So where did he learn to speak English?
Movies, and then translating. More and more, he got better and better.
As a truck driver.
I think he watched a lot of American movies. Like he loved westerns and that kind of thing.
As a truck driver?
Yeah,
before the war?
I think so, yes. Yeah, and even before that, even as a young athlete, basketball player / high jumper, he was into American things. Always was drawn to it.
Oh, so he was a basketball player too.
Yeah.
He's a tall guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just want to point out that we're beyond an hour, and we asked you about what guests you like, and you've gotten 2.
And we never even talked about Mr. Marking.
Okay.
My government teacher.
Let's do it. Let's talk about Mr.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because like I said, he came to Guam and immersed himself into the government. Not necessarily to be a politician, but just to learn the makings of government of Guam.
Does it bug you guys that Guam doesn't count when they vote, or you don't get to vote the same way like on the island? You guys obviously can do different things here, but. If you live out there, like you have representatives that have to shut the fuck up in Congress and.
Well, listen to this one. George Miller was our congressman here in Vallejo for many years before it turned to now it's
Mike.
Mike Thompson.
Yeah, Mike Thompson.
Right. But the rezoning, right? Back when in the 90s, Julie and I operated a newspaper, a Guam newspaper, out of our home here. And we did that for 5 years because this was before email. And
it was an English language newspaper that spoke to people who were concerned or interested about Guam and the issues surrounding Guam. So no matter where you lived, if you cared about Guam.
It was almost like a Facebook on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, so we were afforded the distinction of being a minority-owned newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, we were even invited to the Clinton inauguration, the first one in '93.
Are you kidding? Wow.
Serious as a heart attack.
Wow.
Because we were a minority-owned paper.
Yeah.
And so all minority-owned papers in the nation
got to
and we had a small subscription and stuff like that, but we were bumming arms with all the rest of the American Indian newspapers and Hispanic newspapers and the like, Middle East, all of them. And so we had an opportunity to meet with George Miller because of the paper.
Yeah.
And he wanted to, he's a politician. We really like George Miller. But I brought up a little thing about people from Guam with George Miller that I wondered if he knew a whole lot about. I said, Congressman, you're I'm thinking you're familiar with the Organic Act of Guam, which is like the Constitution. Yeah. I said, okay, that was ratified in 1950, right? Antonio B. Wampat, congressman from Guam, was one of the spearheaders of that movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you guys in Congress, 1950, that was before your time,
Yeah.
but signed. It was a signature that made us Americans in Guam. But in those provisions, it said, yeah, we'll make you a citizen, but you ain't voting for president.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'm saying the Chamorros back there were just gleeful as hell.
Sure.
That in 1945, the Americans came and liberated us from the Japanese.
John cried when he introduced Woody Williams, and he wasn't even there.
I wasn't even there.
It's how
Thank you,
beautiful
Woody.
it is.
Thank you, Woody.
And I don't mean to poke fun. I mean, that's how serious this
Yeah.
all is, you know?
Oh, yeah. And so, man, we're regressing like crazy.
It's all right.
But back then in 1945, we were liberated.
yeah.
But just like any other civilization, the people in Guam we were in class because the Spaniards in the 1500s instilled this clan thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And echelons and so people with land on Guam were up here, and the ones with less land were down
Yeah.
there. And so, and guess who owned the more desirable lands? The Rickards of the Chamorros, right? And so Uncle Sam said, hey, Arteros, man, we'd love to borrow some of that, your big-ass property up there in northern Guam,
Yeah.
because an Air Force base would just be fantastic up there. A lot of flat land for runways and the Arteros back there. Oh, Uncle Sam, God dang it, yes indeed. You can have our property. You gonna give it back? Oh yeah, don't worry. We'll give it back.
Yes.
At some point, we'll give it back. But bear in mind, we're gonna fence it because it's gonna become military, and, and we're going to be responsible and decide who's gonna come in and who's not.
Yeah.
Right? You understand, right? Oh yeah. We understand that. Okay. Down in the southern part, Apra Harbor on Guam is one of the deep natural harbors.
Okay.
That wasn't meant to be a harbor. It was an opening, an inlet.
Yeah.
Whoa, the Navy loved that. Yeah. So the families down there that own that property, Cruz, Santos, all those names down there own those properties. Hey, we'd like to do the same thing with you. Oh, of course, Uncle Sam. You came and liberated us from the Japanese. You can have that.
Oh, God.
We're going to give it back, right? Oh, yeah, you get it back. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that went on during that era. So when Mr.
Was the
Martin-
Chamorro guy the guy that had the property before San Quentin is built?
So anyway, so you know what my question to Congressman Miller was back when we met with him. He said, okay, we became Americans through this Organic Act signature, right? If anything, they could rescind that, right? American government can rescind that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not likely, but it can, right?
Yeah.
George Miller goes, yeah. I said, okay, since I moved, I'm now a Californian. I am no longer a Guamanian.
Yeah.
Okay? Guamanians are people who live on Guam.
Right.
If you moved to Guam and you started voting for Guam politics, you become a Guamanian.
Yeah.
And guess what? You can't vote for
Wow.
Yeah,
president.
the presidential
you're-
ballot does not show up where you vote.
Unless you're in the service, because then you're geographically not there.
Right.
Basically. Okay.
But the same thing goes with servicemen from Guam who live here all of their lives in the service.
Oh, my gosh.
They can't vote for president because they're still Guamanian.
Yeah.
And so so then my question to Congressman Miller, should the federal government rescind that and say, okay, Guam, fuck it, you're not going to be, we're cutting this.
We're not
Yeah.
making citizens
Yeah.
out of you guys anymore.
What happens to me and my family? Because now I'm a Californian, but I became an American through that piece of paper.
Yeah.
What happens to me, Congressman? He goes,
You see.
I I'm going to have to get back to you.
Yeah. You still waiting?
I'm still waiting. It's on 1993.
I'm going to get back to you right after we're gerrymandered.
Can we gerrymander my district around this house over here?
But I was really I was amused actually by George Miller, because he said, "Man, wow,
Yeah.
that is a deep ass question," and I said, "Yeah, but it's a real question, isn't it?"
It is a real question.
He goes, "Yeah, it is."
I mean, there's plenty of things to be ashamed of in our country and politics and that kind of stuff. But I really am ashamed that we have all these territories that.
we're the most.
Yeah, like we really,
We're the most powerful nation, but we have the most colonies.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Mr. Marking, going back to Mr. Marking, he was really intrigued by that situation, that he really immersed himself, and so he brought that to our classes.
Yeah.
We were, when the bell rang to go into Mr. Marking's class, God damn it, everybody was in there, because everybody, all the kids, even the kids who didn't have essentially the most smarts, or they thought they weren't as smart as some others.
Like those Santoses.
He enthused the class. That's why I mentioned this, because you were talking about your classmate who teaches down there, and how I'm blaming him a little bit to how he conducts his class, because Mr. Marking he really did make smart folks out of us.
Yeah.
With government and civics and that kind of stuff, because it was his passion, and so all he did was just pass it on to us. And God dang,
he
man,
exercised his passion.
For the whole goddamn 2 years that I had Mr. Mark, he did not give us a fucking test.
Nah. Yes.
He didn't.
But he gave you passion.
Right. But he passed everybody. He just said, "Hey, I'm going to give you all B's. If you need an A, talk to me. Yeah. Give me a reason why I should have this A. But otherwise, I'm giving you a B without even taking a test." Because he felt that all his kids, all his students, were actually instilled by his stuff, and all he was doing was passing along what he had learned from.
What happened to him?
I have no idea, because when I left Guam, and I haven't been back to it, hardly any of the graduation reunions or anything like that, so I don't know. But I know that he was still there several years after I left high school, because I would hear kids talking about Mr. Marking, and man, he had the most profound buck teeth. He was that kind of guy, and I don't know that he ever even got married. I'm not sure that he ever did, but like I said, he was very passionate in his teaching, and he instilled that, and he made pretty smart kids out of my peer group, and
Well, we want to salute the educators out there, so that's something that those things stick with us. I saw my high school English teacher, Mr. Intently, though.
Oh yeah.
I saw him at a birthday party. My friend Josette Lacey turned 50, and he was there. I didn't get a chance to talk to him.
You
but
didn't?
whenever I do, I always approach him as if he'd never remember me. He didn't have any good reason to remember me, but he always remembers me. And I think was one of those guys who was the smartest teacher I think I ever had. He just had the most horsepower upstairs. But those things stick with us,
Yeah.
They really do stick with us, especially when it has something to do with, I think, when the teachers drive something home that is very practically relatable. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
I
remember him talking about running into Mr. Intently maybe 10, 15 years after you came out of high school.
Yeah.
And you approached him. I'll never forget this, because you approached him and you say, "Hey, I'll never forget Lay Lane."
I told him, I said, Mr. Intently, I think you're the smartest teacher I ever had.
Hey, this is P.A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
I told him, I said, Mr. Intently, I think you're the smartest teacher I ever had. And he said, "Well, you set the bar pretty low." And I said, no, man, I'm being serious. And he said, listen, I'll be lucky if I actually taught you the difference between to lie and to lay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what I said, but I, summed it up. I said, this, here's what you taught me. And he was like, that's pretty good. Okay. And then that was it. We didn't talk about it beyond that, but it was something that I always, like I said, I always act like, hey, you don't know who I am. And he says, something along the lines of, yeah, I know exactly who you are. He knew everybody. And it wasn't because I stood out. It's because he knew everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he was that kind of teacher.
Yeah.
My chemistry teacher was one that, Mr. Knutson, and he insisted that it's Knutson, not just Knutson.
Yeah.
But he had a personality of a goddamn couch or something like that. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just made it miserable to.
So miserable.
Yeah, to go into his classes,
Yeah.
I don't remember what my first chemistry teacher was, but we took chemistry in the 5th grade.
Oh, shit.
And she was brand new out of college, and she was smoking hot. You want to talk about chemistry?
Uh-huh.
I don't remember her name.
Well, 5th grade because he was in that.
Does it count as chubbing up if you just got a little tiny little fella down there?
Oh, yeah.
It counts as
there
chubbing?
was blood
Okay.
flow, for sure,
All right.
yeah. I mean, it might not have been impressive, but it was more impressive than it was a minute
Right.
ago before she walked
Right.
in. She looked like probably a cross between Farrah Fawcett and, somebody else with feathered hair.
Sure.
But
Who's this?
my chemistry teacher in the 5th grade.
that one you're talking
Yeah.
about? But yeah, he was in the GATE program, which we struggled to eventually extricate him from that because he wasn't not that he wasn't learning anything.
He wasn't
that
G enough?
He wasn't
Yeah. Enough about me.
showing it. But
He
anyway,
had low G, low T.
Yeah.
so you were uniformed once, right?
Yeah,
In
for
the
sure.
Korea?
Yeah, I was just with more than I was in.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because these things you realize as you get older. I stayed in the field. Most everybody else would graduate up and do things like you and go to the Pentagon and work on budgets and shit like that.
Yeah.
I never did that stuff. I just stayed in the field, so I just got better and better and better at doing all of that
Yeah.
tactical stuff.
Drinking
It's
tea,
fucking
hanging
ever.
around
I
guys
picked
and
the fuck out
beards
of
who
some tea.
didn't smell all that
Yeah.
great.
Which brings me back to I was at the Pentagon the week before the 9/11.
Oh, I'm glad you were safe.
Defending a budget. So one of the Navy captains that was a pretty good friend of mine back then. Yeah, he got killed in that because that area. In fact, that area where the 737. No, what the heck? What kind of airplane was that?
It was big, that's for sure.
Yeah, was in that wing.
Yeah.
That I had my meetings
terrible.
in. God damn.
Yeah. That's a big building too. Like if you,
Oh wow.
that hardly anybody dies in that thing. And when you look at the size of the building and how many people are there, it's just dumb luck.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like a maze.
Yeah.
Unless you know exactly where you're going, and there's no GPS to send you.
It can
to send
take you
there.
forever. You're like, I'll be there in half an hour.
Yeah.
And you're walking fast the whole time.
Yep.
It's just a big building, and it's
Yeah, you
massive.
think getting from the Centurion Tower at Caesar's Palace to the conference center is long. That's like a 15-minute walk, and it is long.
It is
But it's not like taking a lap around the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah. It's a big building.
that building was and,
Multiple floors.
Yeah.
So
and
big.
you know what country tried to it did its darndest to build something similar.
Was
to
it
that?
Poland and then they make a U?
No,
It's a Polish joke.
South Korea.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, the Octagon. We called it the Octagon. The military headquarters in South Korea is down in a town called Daejeon. Daejeon is south of Seoul, about 2-hour drive, and it's in a valley, mountain all around it. Pretty interesting. And the Octagon is pretty much like the Pentagon, except in miniatures, of course. But all their military is situated in there, and the lookouts are throughout that.
Right. So they
whole
own the
thing.
high. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And it was pretty fun going there. So I spent quite a few times in the Octagon.
So your craziest, oh my God, I was TDY to fill in the blank and this crazy ass shit happened. What's that best story?
While you think about that, I'm going to tell the audience that, we weren't allowed to hear anything about these stories when we were kids. We just, my dad had a clearance and we just never talked about it. It just never was brought up, and we knew not to bring it up. So, my brother and I had concocted several different stories and aliases in our heads about how our dad was probably a spy and maybe knew a little more about driving an Aston Martin than he let on, and all these exotic things. Every once in a while, we'd look in the closet when he'd come home from a trip and see if a tuxedo would show up. Stuff like that, and then whether one did or not, we would be like, I think there's a tuxedo. I saw a garment bag. And we would say stuff like that. And then not long ago, as adults, we took my dad shooting. and that was a terrible experience. We understood very quickly that our dad was not James Bond.
Never meet your heroes.
Did not want to get hit in the foot. There was no way.
Yeah, hilarious.
Two incidents
Yes.
come to mind.
Yes.
One was in Sydney Harbor,
Okay.
Australia, back in the first Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
During the first Gulf War, I took a team with me down to Sydney because the Australian Navy they did deploy 2 battleships, a supply ship, and a submarine over to the Indian Gulf. Yeah, and so before their departure, my team certified the classified equipment that we had sold to them under these military aids we're talking about.
I just want to point out, we can give them information to process top secret over open space, but we can't give you the right to vote as a Guamanian. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, right.
Until you came here.
Yeah.
Until I came here. Right.
Yeah.
But what made that story so heartwarming was Americans didn't realize what Australia was doing to support us during that first Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
I came across the gangplank to come off the ship as they were getting underway. The Prime Minister, it was big ass hoopla.
Yeah.
Prime Minister and all the cabinet and everything, and the government people from Sydney and the families of the sailors crying their hearts out because they don't know that these guys are going to come back.
Right.
And by the way, their deployment was 8 months, not 6 like our sailors are subjected to.
Yeah.
8. And so that to me was very striking because, God damn it, I was held responsible for making sure that these guys are going to be able to go out and communicate with us because that's my thing. Is for them to be able to communicate with us, and whether we're going to give them shooting power or targeting or whatever like that, it was going through the shit that I put on there and making sure it worked.
It's such a significant thing because especially in that war, that was all joint fighting. That was joint for the audience is multiple countries working together as one big force.
Yes.
On the same operation. So it's like at D-Day in Normandy, the Brits weren't talking to the Americans. It was like, just go and get close to your beach and go. But here now
we're fighting on the same side, but not together.
Right. You're going, hey, we need to call for fire. Let's get that Aussie ship to blow something. So Army is calling up to maybe Air Force, who's coordinating to the Navy, who's coordinating to the Aussies. That all has to be classified or protected.
I don't know if you were aware of this. Schwarzkopf was pissed when he learned already he was in theater.
Yeah.
That the Army, United States Army, is not very able to talk to the United States Navy and the United States Air Force.
Oh, man.
Because our systems were compartmentalized.
Yeah, right.
What the fuck are you talking about? I can't talk these. Yeah. So it was during, in fact,
that's called combined fighting.
It was during Gulf War that we, as a nation, we had to get together with our Navy and Army parts to say, hey, man, we have similar equipment. Okay, let's get them to talk, man.
Yeah. We don't use that satellite. Damn it. Yeah.
So that's how recent our in our incapabilities were.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other incident
Yes.
I wanted to bring up was in Tallinn, Estonia. My trip to Tallinn, Estonia, I went there twice.
I still have pocket almonds.
My first trip there was to try to set up communications with them. They had a real small navy after getting out of USSR, right? 1991, 92. And they really, really wanted a mission to be part of NATO. They were going to be NATO. They weren't quite yet there, but they were already working the parameters for being NATO. And so they had a small army a small fleet of small vessels that they acquired from Germany, from the UK, and a couple from us, minesweepers from us, and some smaller aircraft. Smaller vessels from these other countries.
Yeah.
And so my mission, once again, was to put a communications package, simple enough, with some covered encryption, to be able to talk to us, because they were going to go and patrol the North Sea and that Baltic area there for us. So during my meetings there, I was introduced to the Chief of Naval Operation, Estonian Navy, who happened to be a lieutenant commander, Estonian.
Okay.
But his boss was a retired U.S. Navy captain of Estonian descent. Because back then they were really wanting Estonian Americans to come back to country and contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and carry dual citizenship and that kind of stuff. But this lieutenant commander that he got his master's from MIT.
Wow.
Here, so he's no dummy.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said, "John, I want to show you something, man, that probably might blow your ass." Okay. So he remember back in USSR times, Tallinn, Estonia was a Central Soviet submarine base.
Yep.
It was one of their. It's like submarine base San Diego,
right?
Where it's a stronghold.
Yeah.
He took me to their former communication site for USSR stuff, HF frequencies and those kinds of and where their transmitter towers and their transmitting equipment, 10,000 watts, 20,000 watts of HF power stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Staircases that were this way going down, hanging light bulbs. Yes.
Yeah.
He said, this is what they didn't want the world to see.
Yeah.
Because they were supposed to be a superpower.
Right. They couldn't even keep a building together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I thought, God dang, man. Yeah. And he said, hey, you mentioned that you started your career with electron tubes and stuff like that. I said, yep. He said, you want to see a 10,000 watt transmitter, 20,000 watt transmitter? He took me to those where the electron tubes were.
Size of a phone booth.
Right.
Yeah. But because it was, in Tallinn, Estonia, where temperatures were always down in the...
It's colder, yeah.
Right. They hardly needed air conditioning to keep these things operating.
Just open the window, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
will you guys speak some tomorrow real quick so we can have some of that recorded?
Oh,
no.
Come on. You say stuff all the time about
I
being
do say
drunk
stuff all
and
the time.
eating and
it's usually about
stabbing
being
the
drunk.
pudding.
It's usually about eating. Usually when people say, hey, man, speak some Chamorro for me, I say this. Okay, we have a saying in Chamorro, and it goes like this. Which is something that you say to somebody when you're questioning the integrity of something they've done.
right.
And what it means literally is, wow, I hope that's not how you wash your dick.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah.
We're a
That's what the
poetic,
world
we're a
needed.
poetic lot.
He's just thinking, no,
With the scrubby loofah thing.
Yeah. See, if you had been using that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's there. There's a piece.
One thing you like about the show, one guest you'd like us to get, and one thing you wish we would change.
Well, I don't know that I would want you to change anything.
I said don't change. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I found the diversity very encouraging, for lack of better words.
Good.
Because we're losing that now, man. Very, very. It's to the point where I think it's very sad and it's very dangerous.
And you know, I'm trying to try to hit the left, I try to hit the right
Yeah.
to show what normal looks like on
Yeah.
both sides. You know.
Yeah.
You're right. It's
Well,
dangerous.
you know, yeah, it's almost funny, but it's not funny. Where we just caught a clip, Hillary Clinton at Trump's inauguration, and sitting right next to her, which I didn't realize at the time, George W. Bush was her neighbor right over here. And when he started in his inaugural speech on the hate and discontent and and all that, Hillary said, "George, what the fuck is he saying?" And and they bleeped out the thing.
Yeah.
I said, and she goes, George never talked to me like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just to have these two people who don't agree on almost anything
Right.
have this kind of sentiment about somebody, talking like that.
Yeah.
That was, and we don't have that right now, man. And that's the part. When John McCain passed away, man, it seemed like it just deteriorated almost immediately after that. Wow, man, that's so having this show the way you guys put it on and with the diversity and the kinds of people that you have on here, man, it's very it's enlightening.
Good.
Yeah.
There were two other questions.
Who do I want to
Yep.
have on your show? John Legend.
All right. John Legend. The call has been made.
John Legend. That's a big one. That's a big one. That'd be a big show.
I'm going to ask. I'm going to say by name request.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works.
Sometimes it works. Yeah. What's the other question?
One thing you like,
You
one
know?
thing you don't like or would like us to change, and then who would you want?
Didn't want you to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it. I'm not too.
What guests have
critical.
we had that you'd like to see back?
Oh, man! But you're not able to anymore because he died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Trumpeter
Mick Gillette.
Mick
Yeah.
Gillette.
Wow,
Yeah.
man.
Mick Gillette, man.
That was a big,
another
that was a big
fascinating
loss.
dude.
Especially since at the end of that show we said, "Hey Mick, when can we come back?" And he said, "I'll sit down with you guys every month, and I got enough stories to keep us going for a long
Yeah.
time."
Yeah.
Oh, you know who else would probably be good? But he would be somewhere in the categories of Mick Gillette. Also, is Huey Lewis.
Yeah,
And you
we'd love
probably
to
are
have
going to
Huey
be able
Lewis
to
on
get
the show.
Huey Lewis on, or his sax player,
Yeah, Johnny Cola.
John. Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, Johnny Cola was on the show technically on the Sly Stone episode.
And he said yes to being on. It's just been, he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to do. And
Yeah.
so he just hasn't wanted to do much press.
Yeah.
But I will get him, though.
Yeah,
If he wants to talk, I'll get him.
He's pretty much comfortable now, right? I mean,
yeah,
and I'm thinking
Yeah.
Huey Lewis was responsible for how his team came out the way they did. right?
sure. He's taken great care of people.
Yeah.
He's taken great care of his band, and Johnny Cola had a great career prior to Huey Lewis, but
Oh, he did.
but a supremely great career with Huey Lewis. Yeah. So when Sly Stone signed his record deal, he signed a 5-album deal or something,
Yeah.
but he only made 3 albums with the Family Stone. 6-album deal, whatever it was. He owed the label 2 more records
Oh.
as Sly and the Family Stone. But the family said, "We've had enough of your dumb ass.
Yeah.
We're leaving." And so the band broke up, and the record label said, "We don't care who is in the Family Stone. We need 2 more records from you." So he put together a new band that was still called Sly and the Family Stone. And the sax player in that band, Jerry Martini left, and the seat was filled by Johnny Cola.
Oh, I'll be darned.
So that was when we went around to Bay Area musicians and said, "Hey, we're doing an episode about Sly. Will you give us some remarks about what Sly meant to your career or your development or what his influence meant to you?" You know, we got a lot of comments from a lot of people. But from him, we got, "Oh, I'll tell you what he meant to me.
Yeah.
I was in the Family Stone." And we went, "Holy shit, what?" So, yeah, we was on the show for a 20-second segment where he told us that story. Maybe it was longer than 20 seconds, but, you know, he gave us that one remark.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'd love to sit down with him, talk with him at length. He's got plenty to say.
Yeah. Well, the reason I brought up John Legend is not only because I really appreciate his music and how it's just how he conducts himself. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy and
Yeah.
a dutiful husband and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll do that stuff. This is a long episode for a guy who had nothing to say. He's probably not going to be interesting to anybody, but once again, that guy who says that goes in for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Actually, an hour and 40, really.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot you can edit.
Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Once again, up until you showed up at the door, I thought, what in the hell am I going to talk about with these guys?